Hey, what's up, guys? Ex-Morgan with My Spiritual Life. Hopefully, this live is working. And here we go. I am really excited about this video. A little bit nervous. It's been a hot minute since I have posted a video. And oh, we are officially live. Perfect. Okay, just wanted to make sure. I have so much more to talk about today. First off, the main topic of the video today is going to be what I learned about myself from leaving Mormonism. But in addition to that, there are some other things I want to talk about. First off, I'm going to be talking at the very end of the video, a little bit of a personal update for anyone who's interested. And also, I want to announce that this is, at least for right now, going to be my last video on this channel. And my plan is moving forward to be posting on my new channel, which is linked below, which is called Understanding You. So more on that to follow, but let's hit it with what I learned about myself from leaving Mormonism. Okay, and comment if you're watching, where you're watching from, and let me know if I've got any tech issues, because I'm trying to remember if I did all the settings correctly. So here we go. I really was excited for this topic when I was trying to think about what I want my kind of last video on this channel to be. And I just thought this one would be perfect because it's me talking about all of the personal growth that I experienced as I was leaving Mormonism, the religion, that I grew up in. And so the first thing that came to my mind as I was thinking about, what did I learn about myself in that difficult transition time? I was 24 at the time. I had been raised in it my whole life. I thought it was true. I thought every part of it was true. Once I didn't think that anymore, I was terrified. And the first big thing that I really learned about myself at that time was how much I relied on what other people thought about me for my self-worth and my self-esteem. And it was such a massive wake-up call because ultimately what ended up happening was that I got to this point where I was like, I'm scared the church is true. I'm scared that it's not true. And once I kind of felt like I decided, okay, it doesn't really make sense to me that this is true, then I was just absolutely terrified what everyone was going to be thinking about me, what my family was going to be thinking about me, what my ward members would be thinking about me. And this was such a massive wake-up call for me because I didn't realize how much I was living my life in a bubble until I was suddenly kind of wanting to get out of the bubble, right? And so as I was realizing that I wanted to leave Mormonism, I felt like I couldn't because I was so scared of what everyone was thinking of me that I didn't know if I would be capable of leaving. And I remember I had this moment where I was like, okay, now I know I have to leave because I can't just stay here just to make people happy. That's so toxic. That's so unhealthy. And so I was like, okay, now I really have to make this happen. So that was one big thing that I learned about myself at that time in my life. I will say that I think what helped me to start to overcome that a little bit was just realizing how gross it felt to me when I thought about just living my whole life being Mormon just so that people wouldn't judge me, right? Because that's where my brain goes at first, right? Is okay, well, I'm just gonna have to fake it, and this is just life. This is what it's gonna be. No, I can't do that. That sounds terrible. So kind of reminds me of something Jordan Peterson says. He says, take your fear and that's in front of you and put it behind you, right? So instead of thinking about, I'm so afraid of what all these people think of me, put some fear behind you. I'm afraid of living my life, wasting all my time because I'm too busy being scared of what people think of me. So put that fear behind you so it pushes you forward. Like, I'm scared of all the years and time and effort I'm going to waste if I don't live my life in the way that I feel like I should and want to. So I like that a lot. Mama Joe said, "Hey all, what's up? Thanks for being here." Okay, so another thing that I learned at this time in my life when I was trying to navigate leaving Mormonism was how insecure I was about feeling like I was a bad person. And it's funny because I don't know, like, uh, it feels funny to talk about it because you look at my life and I was like straight A student in high school. Like, the most rebellious thing I did was like, you know, stay up late till like 1 in the morning making puzzles with my friends. Like, I was such a just very good girl, good little Mormon girl growing up. Like, I never did drugs, I never, you know, did anything crazy, and yet more because of my childhood than anything, I was just always terrified that I was a bad person or that people were going to see that I was a bad person. And so when I was in the crux of my faith crisis, it started to dawn on me like that I felt like without Mormonism, I couldn't prove to everybody that I was a good person. And I was terrified to not have that proof to be able to show everyone, because if I don't have this proof to say like, here's why I'm a good person, then everyone's going to think I'm a bad person, and I'm like also scared that I'm a bad person. So it was just kind of this like whole mess. Um so that was something that my faith crisis kind of made me more aware of. I think that looking back to, I can see how within Mormonism, it was like I was constantly trying to prove myself. And I still did this even after leaving, but it got better and better. This was just when I became more aware of it. I was constantly trying to prove myself. So I was going to the temple all the time. I would like go intense on my church callings. I would work really hard to really, I don't know, almost like try to convince myself that I was a good person. So I would spend all of my time and effort doing all these little like checklist things, like read my scriptures, going to church, going to the temple, all this stuff. And ultimately, it was because I was feeling insecure. Like, I didn't know how to judge if I was a good person or not without my little like checklist. I also realized at this time in my life how much effort I was putting into trying to control other people's image of me, trying to control what they thought of me and what they felt about me. I remember when my whole family found out. So my immediate family knew that I had left Mormonism, but I hadn't told anyone in my extended family. And they found out actually because someone found my YouTube channel at the time and sent it to them. And then they sent it to, the whole extended family. And I was absolutely horrified because not only are they finding out that I'm an ex-Mormon, but they're also finding out that I'm an like anti-Mormon YouTuber. I was horrified. I remember I wanted to throw up immediately upon finding out that everyone had suddenly been sent my videos, and I don't know why I didn't think that they were going to see it. My channel was just so small at the beginning. I just thought there was no way. So I remember um that I was so sick about it all. And the main reason I was sick wasn't because I thought I was doing something wrong, but because I just couldn't stand the thought of them thinking that I was this terrible, evil, horrible person. That was so hard for me to try to manage mentally, but it was so good for me. I needed that because ultimately, the only way you break out of relying on other people's like opinion of you so that you can feel good about yourself is by that opinion not being so good anymore. So in a way, it was terrible, but it was also a blessing because I needed to learn to let go of worrying so much about what everyone else was thinking about me and focus on why I think I'm a good person or why I think I'm a bad person and get to the root of that and work from there. So, next thing one other funny story from that was that I remember at this time when I was knee deep in my faith crisis and I was not going to church as much anymore. And I was like scared, very scared to wear anything that would be like obviously ex-Mormon, like wearing tank tops or things like that. Again, because I just wanted I felt like I needed that validation from other people so intensely. Like I couldn't stand the thought of someone thinking that I was this evil sinner. So I was very careful about what I was wearing. And also on Sundays, I'd be like really scared to go outside in my front lawn because I didn't want anyone to see that I was like alive and well, since they would know that I didn't go to church, because here we live by, a bunch of our neighbors are Mormons. So I was like, I don't want them to see me, make eye contact, realize I'm alive, that I'm not dying, and that I chose not to go to church. Like that horrified me. So I would try to hide inside on Sundays. Um and this was all just really good, important awareness because again, I think I think the best way to live your life is to get to know yourself. Because the more you get to know yourself, the more you can kind of understand why it is you're behaving in the ways you're behaving, why it is you want the things that you want, and try to get to the root of these issues so you can actually improve your life, kind of starting with the root, wherever the root issue is, and build out from there. And so, ironically, tragedy in life will show you so much about yourself. Tragedy will show you who you are, what you want, what upsets you. And if you're willing to be curious and look into it and start to ask yourself why, then you can learn a lot about yourself during these situations. So, yep, that was my fun times of early faith crisis, very scared of what people thought of me. That was one of the biggest lessons I learned in leaving Mormonism, was just how severely attached I was and afraid I was, and trying so hard to micromanage other people's opinions of me. And I will say that I think what ended up helping me through that and getting past that was, one, having so many people disagree with my lifestyle and my choices, because that forces you to kind of sit with that pain of like, oh my gosh, these people think I'm horrible. It forces you to sit with that pain and then to say to that pain, you know what? I actually don't think I'm horrible. And then it forces you to actually comfort yourself. And once you start like kind of comforting and reassuring yourself, then you don't need other people's comfort and reassurance anymore. So that, I think, was in large part what kind of helped me on this path. And it's still something I struggle with. I still worry about what people think. I don't know that you can ever totally not worry about what people think, but it's certainly much better than it's ever been. And if you know anyone that's like, I don't give a shit what people think, they're lying. Just so you know, they are lying. So, another cool thing I will talk about with what I learned about myself was I learned how much shame I was carrying around. And it was and is a lot. And I will say that I think this had way more to do with my childhood than it did Mormonism, but leaving Mormonism, of course, triggered it a lot. I was carrying so much shame. I would feel guilty for the smallest things. I would feel really bad about myself anytime I did anything that would hurt or upset or maybe even possibly slightly perturb someone. I would just feel awful and I would spiral into this like, I'm a terrible person, blah blah blah. It was really hard for me realizing and confronting how much shame I had at this time, because during a faith crisis, you're already like going nuts. And then feeling that weight of all that shame was really, really hard at the time. But again, I don't think there's a good way around it. I think you just have to move through it. So I think you have to be willing to sit with it, be present with it, and kind of just get curious like, well, why do I feel this way? You know, do I need to keep feeling this way? Like, where is this originating? You know, why is it that this particular situation is triggering me, and how could I maybe see this differently? I just don't think there's any way else around a serious shame problem, because my shame problems are very very serious, and I've tried a lot of different things to work through it. And I just think that being present with it, and then getting curious, and cognitive behavioral therapy of like trying to question it and be like, do I need to feel ashamed for this? Like, maybe I don't need to feel ashamed for this. That all was very, very helpful to me. I felt like I made a lot of progress from that. Okay, so another thing I learned about myself was how much of a black and white thinker I am. Holy shit. Like, again, I think this has more to do with kind of my suboptimal childhood, that it got me into a very black and white state of mind where I was like, okay, there are things that are right and there are things that are wrong, and there's no in between. And I'm so scared of making a mistake that I'm just going to always try to do exactly what I'm supposed to do. So I'm going to stay out of trouble. And you think about that, makes sense, because when I was getting, treated badly at home as a child, it was this constant fear of I'm going to get in trouble, right? And that carried into my adulthood so intensely, because it just kind of, Mormonism just became the new platform for it. It's like, oh, I'm going to get in trouble with the bishop, or I'm going to get in trouble with the visiting teaching scheduler. Like, I'm whatever, I'm going to get in trouble. And it's this like, I am just waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm waiting for someone to yell at me or smack me or something. And you know I as I was leaving Mormonism, I realized like I'm such a black and white thinker, because I'm constantly obsessed with like, I have to do it the right way. Very, very obsessed with that. I have to do it the right way. But now I don't know what the right way is, so I'm freaking losing my mind. For someone who's a really big black and white thinker, it's terrifying leaving a high demand religion, because you lose your framework for how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to behave. And when you don't have that anymore, you feel really unsafe, because it's bringing up all this kind of childhood trauma of like, I'm going to get in trouble and I don't know when or how or why, but I need to figure out how to do the right thing. Yeah, that beautiful, good times, fun times. So yeah, very big black and white thinker for sure. And I think a lot of people who are who had similar childhoods to me, are who were raised in high demand religions, are going to be very black and white thinkers. So the next thing that I was thinking of that was a pretty big deal, that I became more aware of during my faith transition, was, it's called authority bias. I actually had to look it up, because I know what it is, but I couldn't remember what it was called. And in my mind, I like to refer to it as the pedestal complex. It's when you put people who have quote unquote authority on a pedestal. And you do this because of those insecurities you feel about yourself. You're looking for someone else to have the answers for you. So I had such a massive authority bias, where it was like, okay, I will immediately trust anyone who I consider to be in any place of authority over me, or just place of authority in general. So a bishop, for example, like if I had gone to my bishop and he was like, God is saying you need to move to Hawaii. And I'm thinking to myself, like, we don't have money. My husband can't get a job there. I'd just be like, well, we have to because that's what the bishop said to do. And like, he's called it God. So like, we literally have no choice. We have to. There would be, it's like my rational brain would just completely shut off when I felt like someone of authority was telling me something. And this is very dangerous, just as a human being in general, because you can put your trust in some really shady characters and end up ruining your entire life because you're not willing to question anyone on anything ever. So another example would be like a therapist or a doctor or a specialist. The unfortunate truth is that there are a lot of bad doctors, therapists, and specialists out there. Right? There's a lot of good ones, but there's a lot of bad ones. And when you have that pedestal complex, you don't think to yourself that any doctor is better than another. You just think to yourself, like, I just need to listen to what this person says and do exactly what they're telling me to do, and everything's going to be okay. And it's the safety thing, right? It comes back to like, ultimately, you just want to feel safe. You want to feel like you're doing the right thing in the right way at the right time. That's just from childhood trauma, wanting that so desperately, feeling so desperate for that. And so as I was leaving Mormonism, I started to realize how intense my pedestal complex was, my authority bias, because I realized that I felt so lost without my person to tell me what to do in every freaking situation. And I also realized this, as I was leaving as I was leaving Mormonism, but also as I was dealing with my sister at the same time who was having serious chronic health issues. And we were going to doctor after doctor and specialist after specialist. And I was seeing so many of them disagree with each other, and it was breaking my brain. Like, I could not handle it because I wanted so badly to believe that someone out there had the answer and that someone out there could just give it to us and we could just do it and we could move on. And so when that wasn't happening, it was freaking me out because it was making me realize, like, oh, maybe there's not someone out there who has the answer, or maybe not someone out there who has all the answers. And that's such a scary feeling when you don't trust yourself. Because when you don't trust yourself, you need someone else to have the answers so that you can follow and do what that person is telling you to do, so that you don't have to deal with the weight of your own failure. And I'm going to unpack that a little bit more in just a second. But another thing I want to point out too is that I felt like I needed someone or some entity or something to help absolve me of my guilt and my shame. I loved going to church and like repenting because it would kind of help my shame a little bit because my shame problems were really severe. But it wasn't really getting to the root of my shame problems. It was just kind of a band-aid for my shame problems, I would say. But without that, I realized I need someone. I just need someone to absolve my guilt. I need someone to tell me I'm forgiven or that I'm okay or that I'm going to make it to heaven. Like, someone needs to tell me that I'm doing a good job. And so leaving Mormonism just made me realize how desperate I was for that, and how quickly I would just throw my own opinion entirely out the window when I thought someone else had this like authority that was more valid than mine. Um yeah. Yeah. So let's see here. What else was I gonna say about that? So a lot of people with traumatic childhoods, the reason that they want someone to tell them what to do all the time is, like I was saying, they kind of want someone to blame for when it doesn't work out, because they know that they feel like they won't be able to handle the shame that they will place on themselves if they make a mistake. They feel like they're not going to be able to come back from that failure, and that it's just going to prove to them and to everyone else that they really are a failure and they just can't They can't manage that in their mind. So they'd rather just find someone and put that person on a pedestal and just do everything that person says. And the sad thing about that is that, again, like I said, it's dangerous because you could put someone stupid on a pedestal and do what they say. That's dangerous. But also, you start living a version of someone's life that isn't even your own. If you're so busy putting someone on a pedestal and trying to do what they're telling you to do, eventually you're just living their life. You're not living your life. But it's just so scary for some people with the traumatic background. It's so scary for them to imagine even thinking about what they would want their life to look like or feel like, because it just feels so distant and so scary. And it's so hard to break out of that mindset of like that fear of making that mistake, of making a mistake or making lots of mistakes. And how are you going to come back from that? And it's a pretty heavy weight. It's a pretty heavy weight to carry around, that responsibility of I'm making decisions for me. It's very empowering, but it's also very heavy and scary to feel like I have to carry this weight around and I have to be willing to take responsibility for when this goes to shit, which it inevitably will, right? Because you're not always going to make good decisions, even if you think that you are in the moment. So yeah, that's a heavy weight. It's hard to deal with. So the next thing I wanted to touch on that I feel like I noticed as I was leaving Mormonism about myself was how much I struggle with decision making. And this is still something I struggle with, but I've gotten so much better over the years. And it really, the key to it, if you struggle, if you get really paralyzed by decision making, the key to it is ultimately becoming more resilient to the idea of failure. Because usually when you feel like you are struggling to make a decision, when you struggle with decision making, just like constantly, the fear underneath that is usually I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to maybe even, like, if you're like me, I'm going to punish myself for that mistake. And I can't deal with that. I can't mentally deal with the ramifications of that. So the key there is if you open yourself up to failure is actually not that big of a deal. Failure is part of the journey. Failure is part of the process. Because really, like, oftentimes when you're trying to make a decision, you're going to make the decision you think is best at the time. But sometimes with certain decisions, you don't know until afterward if it was actually a good decision or not. So you're preemptively punishing yourself for a potential mistake that you really won't know is a mistake until later. And so you have to learn to give yourself this grace of, okay, this might be a mistake, but I'm doing the best that I can. And I think I can dig myself out of this hole if I have to, right? When I was leaving Mormonism, I remember just being so afraid of really pulling that trigger and like leaving, because I couldn't stand the thought of what if I actually leave and I was wrong. And it was funny because I was breaking down about this one day and Jared was like, well, let's play that out. Okay, let's say you leave Mormonism, you never go back, right? What's going to happen in the next life, And Mormonism is actually a quite forgiving theology compared to a lot of other Christian religions, I would say. And so I was like, well, I guess I just go to the telestial or the terrestrial, but some people think you can even move back up to the celestial again, like you can, upgrade your stay after a while, if I could put it that way. And so I started to kind of disconnect myself from these really harsh ramifications that I was making up in my head, because it was like, okay, if I'm wrong, it's not like I'm burning in hell. It's like going to the boring heaven instead of the like really fancy heaven, which like doesn't seem like as scary. And thinking of it that way was actually really helpful for me. So yeah, sometimes walking those decisions through to their ultimate conclusion, I find very helpful. Like, okay, let's say I choose A, let's say I choose B. Worst case scenario A, worst case scenario B. You know, I think I can handle either of those things. Okay, this doesn't feel as scary anymore to me. But yeah, at the time of leaving Mormonism, it definitely opened my eyes to how paralyzed I was with decision making. And especially because at that time in my life, like I had trusted the church to kind of tell me what to do, like, you know, get married, have kids, be a mom, do your calling, whatever. And without that, I was like, I don't even know like what I'm supposed to do anymore, and I don't know what I want to do. And like all of a sudden I have way more decisions I have to make all on my own because I can't offload them onto my bishop or my church or whatever. And so the weight of all these decisions was really hard for me at first and really scary. One thing that helped me at this time was anytime I made a decision and it turned out good, I would actually like compliment myself. I'd be like, Morgan, look, you made a decision and the house didn't burn down. And I was trying to do that to kind of hammer into my brain that like I'm not horrible at making decisions. So maybe I don't have to be as scared of making them as I think that I need to be. And that was helpful. That was helpful. That's definitely some like kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, if you're familiar with that, is like just trying to rewrite the way you see yourself through challenging those different thoughts that you have, and especially the negative thoughts that you have. I will say another aspect of decision making that I think people who are similar to me can relate with is that million possibilities that run through your mind when you're in the midst of making a decision is like all of the possibilities. And it's actually extremely fatiguing. I've noticed that if I have to make a lot of decisions in one day, I will get fatigued very quickly. Still, much less so than I would have before, but I still will get fatigued if I have to make a lot of decisions because with each decision, my brain is running a million possibilities at once and trying to figure out the worst case scenario for every single one. And it's this just very hyperactive kind of, reaction from my nervous system, my brain trying to keep me safe, right? And it's this like very intense onslaught of like just all the possibilities, all the worst case scenarios, all the things I need to do to prepare for every worst case scenario, and it can spiral very quickly. And that was just super inflamed at the time that I was leaving Mormonism because I had so many decisions that I had to make at that time in my life. And again, dealing with that weight of how am I going to deal with if I was wrong? That's a heavy thing to confront, especially if you didn't have a good childhood and you don't feel secure in yourself as it is. So, yeah. One more tip I'll say about that is that I think ultimately what really helped me to move past that was the perspective that failure is really the only way to figure out the path you're supposed to be on. So like, let's say you have path A and you have path B and you don't know which one to do. You try path A, find out it was a mistake. If you can, course correct back on to path B, right? That sometimes that's not an option, but it's an option more often than our traumatized brains will lead us to believe. And that can be really comforting and take some of that pressure that you feel when you're in the midst of making a decision off your shoulders so that you don't feel such an intense reaction to Like, how am I supposed to make this decision? The weight is just too heavy. The pressure is too much. Another thing that has helped me with this over these last, I don't know, several years I've been working on this is to set a time limit on making a decision. Because even after I make the decision, I often will revert back to, but was it the right decision or was it the wrong decision? And I'll actually pull myself out of the decision back into the hypothesizing stage again. And I'll drag myself back into it and back into that intense, really fatiguing thinking again. And so, what I've tried to do to kind of set healthier boundaries with myself with this is set a time limit. Like, okay, by Tuesday of next week, I have to decide whether or not I'm going to do pickleball league next month or not, or whatever, you know. I have to decide by that day, and then there's no going back. Obviously, you can go back if you have to, but setting those boundaries with yourself, forcing yourself to have a conclusive ending to a decision can be really helpful and really important for someone who struggles in the same way that I do. And sometimes it's better to give yourself less time than you think you even need to make the decision. So sometimes I will tell myself I have 20 minutes to make a decision on this, and then boom, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to let myself think about it anymore. And that can be really, really hard, but it can also be really, really helpful, because instead of spending the whole day spinning and thinking and going back and forth, you just sit down and you just say, okay, here's what I'm going to do. And hopefully it works out. And if you notice yourself pulling yourself back into trying to second guess yourself and doubt yourself, all you have to say to yourself is, nope, we're not going there anymore. Like, time has passed. Got to roll with it now. And it's hard at first, but it gets easier over time. So another thing, as I was contemplating on this video, that kind of came to my mind was just realizing, especially from when I was younger, how hollow my personality was, because I didn't know who I was. And I know that's kind of flowery language, and a lot of people use that, like, I don't know who I am. Who am I? You know? But I do think that it's relevant and important to some extent to have some semblance of, this is who I am, this is what I like to do, these are my values. That anchors you in a way that allows you to feel like you know how to behave, you know what to aim for, you know what to spend your time doing, etc. And I was so insecure growing up that Mormonism became like a pseudo personality for me, where it was like, well, I'm Morgan the Mormon. Literally, I grew up in St. Louis, and I was one of the only Mormons at my school, other than like my siblings. And that's what my friends called me, was Morgan the Mormon. And it just goes to show, like, how much of my personality it really was, the fact that they called me that, because it was such a big part of who I was, that was literally what they referred to me as. And eventually they just shortened it to Mormon. Like, my name was Mormon. Doesn't get more pseudo personality than that. I definitely don't think so. So as I was leaving Mormonism, I realized that there was kind of this void of, like, I just didn't know how to interact with people. I didn't know, like, even just like how to tell jokes anymore, because like everything had shifted so much. It was like I didn't know what my point of reference was anymore, or like, because when I was Mormon, at least I knew, like, there were some appropriate jokes and some inappropriate jokes, and it just, all the lines were blurred, and it was like, I just don't even know what to do or what to say or what to think, like how to behave around people, and like, am I supposed to be a badass? Like am I supposed to, like, I just don't know who I am. And and again, this was a gift to learn this about myself, is that because once you learn you don't know who you are, then you can actually start to discover it, right? And I remember at this time in my life, as I was trying to rebuild things, I actually started pulling myself back to like my high school, like, and early teen years, and thinking about like what my hobbies were and what subjects in school I enjoyed and what friends I enjoyed. And I started like actually trying to dissect why. Like, why was it that I liked math class so much? Or why was it that I liked Rubik's Cubes? Or why was it that I liked theater? Like, what was it about these things that I liked? And trying to kind of reverse engineer who I was based off of what I had spent a lot of my time and money and effort doing. And that was actually very helpful. So yeah, leaving Mormonism, it was so hard feeling like I didn't know who I was anymore. But I never really did know who I was as a Mormon, because it was just a facade. It was just like a placeholder for a personality. And not that I had no personality. Like I just think that for people like me who grew up with very unstable home, what ends up happening is that you don't feel secure in who you are and how to behave, and you're very worried about what everyone else is thinking of you. So you try to stick to what's safe and what makes sense. And so you try to latch on to group identities a lot more intensely than you otherwise would have if you had more of a semblance of your own sense of um, individuality, right? So the people who are the most Mormony Mormons, in my opinion, more often than not, are the ones who have the biggest problem with not having their own sense of identity. And so they're relying on Mormonism to be this identity for them that they can rely on, so they know how to behave and what to do. So it was very helpful learning that about myself. Good times. Right. So the last thing I had on my list of these things that I learned about myself after leaving Mormonism was how bad I was at processing my emotions. Now, if you've watched my channel for a while, you know I am a huge proponent of feel your feelings. I think it's the number one problem in the entire world, is that we don't have any good coping skills anymore. And not only do we not have any good coping skills anymore, but we have literally a cell phone in our pocket all the time that can immediately distract you from any negative emotion you could ever not want to feel. And a lot of people think like, well, why wouldn't you just ignore every negative emotion? And my answer to that is people have psychotic breaks for a reason, and that it's because they bury their demons instead of confronting them. And unfortunately, I've seen it time and time again with, I mean, with family members, with friends of friends. This stuff, the stuff from your childhood that hurt you, the stuff from your or later in your life, it doesn't just go away just because you pretend it didn't happen. I love what Jordan Peterson says about it. Like, if you don't make peace with these things that hurt you, they will continue to haunt you. And I've seen that in my life. And the beauty of it too is that in reverse, if you confront these things, you open up a whole new world to yourself, because you don't realize how much energy you're spending trying to numb out all of that shit you don't want to deal with until it's gone, until you make peace with it, until you forgive, until you really work through and acknowledge your pain and come to whatever conclusions about it that you need to, so that you can move on and let it go. Then suddenly you actually start to feel so free, and you have all this energy and excitement and enthusiasm for life that was really being squandered by all of that energy you spend just trying to avoid that pain. I just feel like, as someone, I feel very qualified to speak on this, as someone who struggled severely with anxiety, with serious people pleasing problems, with being so afraid what everyone thought of me. In high school, my friends would have to pull me out of class sometimes because I was having panic attacks. Like, my mental stability was very poor for most of my life. And I've tried a lot of things to improve my situation. And the thing that has helped me the most has been processing my feelings and letting them go. And that is really hard to do when you grow up in a high demand religion and you're taught that certain feelings are not okay. Like anger, things like that. They're not okay. They're not allowed. They're of the devil. But what I noticed as I was leaving Mormonism is that I would feel a certain feeling. Like, I'd be like, because you feel so many feelings when you leave a high demand religion. You feel angry, you feel sad, you feel excited, you feel depressed. Like, you feel so many feelings. And I noticed about myself along this journey that anytime I would feel like a negative emotion, my immediate reaction was to tell myself I shouldn't feel that way, and here's why. And it's a terrible coping skill because it doesn't even work. If you could just talk yourself out of feeling a certain way, like, we wouldn't need mental hospitals. We wouldn't need therapists. You can't talk yourself out of your feelings. It's unfortunate because sometimes you feel something like, for example, maybe like your parents buy something nice for your sibling. They don't buy it for you, right? And you're like, I am feeling angry and jealous. And maybe I don't want to feel that way. Maybe I want to be happy for my brother. But you can't just tell yourself, well, I'm supposed to be happy for my brother, so I'm just going to be happy for him. You can't control your feelings like that. I think, in my experience, the best way to deal with your feelings, for me, and I've tried a lot of things, is to just acknowledge it. Just be like, yeah, I feel angry about this. And also, I feel stupid that I feel angry about it, but, that's life. And I think if you can acknowledge your feelings just exactly the way that they are, then you can actually just let them go. You can be like, man, I'm really angry that ABC thing happened. And just be angry until it goes away. It will go away. If you let yourself feel your feelings, I promise you, they won't stick around forever. You're not going to be angry forever. You're going to be angry until you get bored of being angry, and then you just let it go and you move on, instead of just being like, well, I shouldn't be angry. And you just have this whole like wrestling match with yourself over something that really could just take 2 seconds to process if you would just let yourself have a feeling once in a while. Most of this, really, I don't think I learned from Mormonism. Like the anger stuff, yeah, but I think I mostly learned it from my childhood. It was a lot more like, I'm not allowed to feel anything negative because it's going to impact my parent in a way that they don't want to be impacted. And so if your parent didn't know how to help you deal with your feelings, the odds are they took the very dismissive approach of trying to help you cope with it by telling you you shouldn't feel that way, right? That was literally what my parents were telling me is, oh, you're sad, well, you shouldn't feel that way, and here's why. And so that's what the internal voice in me became after so long. So eventually I've just learned, like, I love the way Dr. Shefali puts it. So Dr. Shefali, she wrote the book Awaken Family. You become your own parent as you become an adult, right? Because you're the one in charge of you. You're the one telling you when to go to bed. You're the one telling you what to eat, when to clean your room, when to not. You're the one dealing out the punishment, dealing out the reward, dealing out whatever, right? You become your own parent. And that internal parent will automatically be whatever your parents did pretty much at their worst. And you have to work hard to change the way you parent yourself in order to have I would say, a more productive, successful, fulfilled life. And like, not that you can't be successful. There's a lot of people who are, financially successful, but they're really mean to themselves. I just don't consider that successful. I consider having a good relationship with yourself, with your family. I consider that a much more important success. Anyway, kind of a tangent, but yeah, when I was leaving Mormonism, I just noticed that I was very impatient with my feelings. And I think that I've done myself a massive favor by over the years working on getting more and more patient with how I feel, and that it's very much reflective in my reactions to things, because I get over things so much faster because I don't have that wrestling match that I'm doing anymore. Sometimes I do still, but I don't have that wrestling match. Instead, I'm like, oh, I'm angry about this thing. You know what? That's okay. I'm going to let myself be angry about this. And if I need to do something about it, I'm going to do something about it. But maybe I just need to feel angry, or maybe I just need to feel sad, or whatever. So yeah, that's my tips with that. Jackie Brown said, that explains why I berated myself as a teenager. Yes, that also explains why I still berate myself as a 29-year-old. Yeah, no, it's pretty eye-opening. I very much love the whole concept of parenting yourself, because it makes you approach yourself with a lot more compassion than you otherwise would. And I think that compassion is the key to overcoming childhood trauma. And I say compassion, it's different. You don't want to make excuses for yourself. You don't want to be like, oh, well, I'm just going to do whatever I want and everyone can F off because whatever, like you don't want to take it to the extreme of like, I'm going to treat people badly because I had a bad childhood. So I'm just like, it's just the way I am. I'm just a Libra. No. I think you want to have compassion for yourself. Like, you blow up at your kids, right? You say to yourself, like, I shouldn't have done that, but I understand why I did. And I'm willing to see what I could do differently to prevent this from happening again. I think that's the healthy approach of like, Morgan, you fucked up, but you're not a bad person. This is hard. Parenting is hard. No one's perfect at it. Let's think about how this could be better next time. And in that example specifically, because that one's one I've been working on, for me, what I've been thinking about with that is I need to catch myself earlier. Like, I need to catch when I'm getting to a boiling point earlier before I snap and yell at my kids, so that I'll have to have this whole conversation myself. And I need to almost like put myself in timeout of like, go listen to some music or do something where I can bring the intensity down before it escalates so far that I feel like I have all this exploding happening, right? Oh man, yeah, nothing will teach you more about yourself than having a child, right? That's probably gonna be one of the first videos I do on my new channel. Leaving Mormonism will teach you a lot about yourself, but not as much as being a parent. Okay, let me see if there's anything else I want to say for this section. Yeah, just to reiterate, telling yourself not to feel a certain way does absolutely nothing. Telling yourself it's okay to feel this way usually just allows you to feel it, let it go, and move on. And it helps you to not pile up just more and more baggage on top of the probably already a lot of baggage that you have. I mean, all of us have some baggage at least, right? Some of us are blessed with more baggage than other, but then, then those of us blessed with extra baggage just become really buff. So there's that. Okay, so I'm going to read a couple comments that I got from some forums asking this question. And please feel free right now to comment in the live chat. What did you learn if you left a high demand religion? What did you learn about yourself during that transition? This comment came from Mama Joe. The most important thing I learned through my deconstruction is that the inner voice that helps guide my life is me. What I was always told is the voice of God or the Holy Spirit is me. I'm that voice. Here's another comment. I totally relate to everything you said. Oh, sorry. That's that in response to my comment. I just shared some of the examples that I shared with you guys. Looking back on some of the advice I was given by bishops, I did what they said all the time, feeling it was wrong, and it was, but I did it anyway. Now I trust myself to make decisions that are fit for me in my life, whether anyone else agrees or not. It's not an easy place to get to, but it's well worth it. One person said, I discovered how judgmental I had been. As a member, I thought I was pretty easygoing and generally accepting, but you can't actually be if you believe you have the ultimate truth and other people don't. This comment says, I found my own moral compass and discovered that things I thought I believed didn't align with my true core self. I have more self-confidence now because I finally know who I am, and it has nothing to do with hanging on to a pseudo value of having never said the F word or never tasting alcohol. Turns out I'm a pretty awesome person and love cursing and love alcohol. Incidentally, it turns out I can have full control of alcohol consumption and not immediately become an alcoholic. Someone else said, I really found that I had been leaning on what outside validation for my worth as a person, which is kind of why I was saying at the beginning of this video. That generational conditioning and traditions had an overwhelming influence on my mental health and the shame and guilt for my personal core values that didn't align with church teachings. I learned that the so-called plan of happiness really only made me miserable. So those were some comments that people had shared. So feel free to comment right now if you want to share what you learned about yourself when you left your high demand religion, or anything that you thought that was cool or that you related with that I brought up in this video so far. Okay, we've still got more, so hang tight for the juicy personal updates at the end. And if you're just joining recently, as of right now, I'm going to talk more about this in just a minute, but this is planned to be right now the last video I'm going to post on this channel before I put it to bed, and I'm going to explain why. But I've got another channel that I'm going to be doing, so click the link below and subscribe to that other channel, and I'm going to start working on that one hopefully soon. Mama Joe said, I can be good all by myself. Says who? Says Satan. Just kidding. Love it. Okay, so I wanted to comment just a couple more things before I get into kind of channel update, personal update, about just a couple other things I learned from leaving Mormonism, but wasn't necessarily about me. And one thing was what I learned about other people. And one of the biggest things I learned is that fear will cause people to say and do horrible things in order to try to manipulate you or get you to react a certain way. But if they're doing that, it's not about you. It's about them and their need to control everything. And you don't have to take their overreaction personally as an attack on you being a bad person. And so the more you can separate, like, let's say you have a family member that's like this was a criticism I got when I left the church. It's like, oh, you're not a good mom if you don't take your kids to church, right? Well, define good mom, right? Because there's a lot of good moms that take their kids to church and also beat them right after church or even during church. So it's like, how are we measuring good in this situation? So just recognizing that if you have people treating you badly, don't take it personally in any regard, whether it's Mormonism or not. If people are treating you badly, it's because they're hurting. It's because they've got insecurities, they've got issues, and just like let it be their issues. And just if you have to, just cut that person off or keep distant from that person or set boundaries with that person. It was really hard for me at the time not to take any insult very, very personally. But I wish if I could go back and say something to myself, I'd be like, listen, like, your family's freaking out about this, but like, they don't they don't know any different. Like, they're terrified. They're scared that you're going to go to hell, and they're trying to save you. Like, they're trying to do what they think is the right thing to do in this situation. And not to justify it, right? Don't put up with bad behavior, but have that compassion so you don't take it personally, and that you can set those healthy boundaries without feeling like a piece of shit. Jackie Brown said, the traditions one was a big one for me. My husband and I decide what we do as a family, and we don't do things just because we've always done it that way. I love that. I feel like that needs to be like a continual thing in everyone's life. Is like, okay, why are we doing this? Do we like doing this? Do we want to do this? Should we be doing this? Should always be reevaluating. Oh, one other thing I'll say about if people are saying things to you, like if you're leaving Mormonism, or just it having an argument about something else, nothing people say can trigger you unless there's some underlying issue you have with the things that they're saying. So, like, for example, if like my brother were to call me up and be like, Morgan, I'm pretty sure you're a murderer, like, I would not be offended. I would laugh. I'd be like, what medication are you on or off? Like, what is going on? I wouldn't be triggered at all, because I'd be like, I'm definitely not a murderer. And but like, for example, when I got the criticism when I was leaving Mormonism, like, I'm a bad mom if I don't take my kids to church, that really triggered me. And instead of trying to get mad and lash out at them for making you feel bad, get curious, like, why is this bothering me so much? And the reason it was bothering me so much was because I was scared of being a bad mom. I had like a lot of things in my childhood that went really poorly and was treated really poorly in many really serious situations. And so I was so scared of repeating that pattern that criticism really triggered me. And so if you get triggered by something someone says to you, don't blame them. Just go inward and figure out, why is this triggering me, and what peace do I need to make with this, right? And what helped me in that situation was, like, I actually started doing CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, on being a good mom, because I would write down with cognitive behavioral with CBT, you're like, I'm a bad mom, I'm a good mom, and you write evidence for both, right? And you try to kind of challenge the predominant negative thought and be like, well, here's some reasons I'm a good mom, here's some reasons I'm a bad mom, here's more reasons I'm a good mom. And you try to start to shift that narrative, right? Because if you're similar to me, you're probably harder on yourself than you actually should be or need to be. And your perspective just slants way too negative. And so challenging yourself is a great way to work through that and to help yourself from getting triggered in the future, because it's a lot harder for people to offend you when you feel really good about yourself. And that it's genuine and it's backed up by facts. It's like, oh, I'm a good mom because I do ABC for my kids, and like, yeah, I make these mistakes, but like, overall I'm trying to do good. I'm trying to apologize. I'm trying, so it's like, if someone were to criticize me today and tell me they don't think I'm a good parent for whatever reason, I actually feel like I would be much less offended than I was back when I was in Mormonism, because I feel way more secure in my abilities as a mother now, because I've gotten more to the root of the problem. So how to focus. Oh yeah, here's the next one. Was another thing I learned as I was leaving Mormonism was how to focus on building my own confidence and self-worth outside of what other people think. And so a big part of that for me was cognitive behavioral therapy. Like, why do I think I'm a bad mom or wife, or why do I think like I'm a bad friend? And like, really just trying to shift the narrative on that. That was super helpful. And then also taking people off pedestals and just realizing, like, okay, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of really good people that have a lot of good ideas and some bad ideas. And like, but there's no one out there who's perfect, right? There's no one out there who knows everything, who has answers to everything. And the more you can kind of get yourself to believe that, the more you can actually feel empowered to try to be confident in your own decision making, because you start to realize, like, well, if no one out there knows everything, like, maybe I'm actually the best one to make a decision for my life, since I'm the one that's living it and I'm the one that's got to deal with the consequences. So it can help you to feel more confident and trusting of yourself, and less afraid of making mistakes, and less being paralyzed when you put someone else, less paralyzing yourself while putting other people on pedestals. And the last thing I was going to mention before I kind of do like channel update and personal update was I I think leaving Mormonism just allowed me to become a lot more resilient toward failure. Like I said, as I was leaving the church, a lot more decision making came into my life, and I I had to start trusting myself more, because it forced me to sit with my fear of failure more and be like, okay, like I might screw this up, and what am I going to do? And I had to kind of sit with it and be like, well, if this happens, I guess I'll do this, or I'll try to do this, or whatever. And kind of just getting my brain to be like, maybe making a mistake isn't as big of a deal as I think that it is. That is the biggest favor you can do yourself, because if you can get yourself to be more resilient toward failure, you become unstoppable in some ways, because if you're not scared of failing, you're actually going to go for shit, right? The thing that holds us back is how afraid we are of the failure. And so if you're not afraid of failing, if failing becomes not a big deal, then you can actually go after whatever dreams you want to go after, because you're not feeling held hostage by all of your fear. And not that you can't be afraid, but you have to be less afraid. you know Being less afraid so that you can take more action is ideal. So I think, to show this dynamic, as I was like younger, my attitude toward failure, to show you how intense it was, is that when I would get a test back in high school and college, I would not look at it. I wouldn't look at the markings on it and the criticism on it, because I was so like afraid of failing and afraid of seeing the judgment from my teachers that I just like would shove it in my backpack and like never look at it again. Which is not good, right? I mean, sometimes I would, but oftentimes I would find myself doing that because I just didn't want to confront the criticism. Um, and I just couldn't stand the thought of like someone judging my work and seeing that I was making mistakes, right? I'd rather just like pretend that they didn't see it. So anyway, so before, my view toward failure was like, I'm terrified to make this decision or go after this thing that I want, because what if I fail? I'm going to feel horrible. I'm going to be so embarrassed. I'm going to feel like I am a loser, like all these things, right? And so what I've tried to shift that over the years, as I've kind of worked through a lot of these issues I've had in the past, is okay, this could flop, right? This thing I'm going for, maybe this decision I'm making, but I really won't know until later. I won't know until I try, right? And I'm doing the best with what I have. I'm doing the best with what I know. And I'm hopeful that if things go wrong, I'm going to deal with the consequences, and I'm going to course correct and what have you. Yeah, and I just think that's like the best way you can approach life in general, is like with that attitude of like that compassion, like I'm going to do my best and that's all I can do. Oh my gosh, I got to tell you something funny. Not funny, like intense. I was watching this show called God, I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, this son is talking to his mom. He's like a teenager and he's really insecure. He's talking to his mom and he's expressing some insecurities, and he's like, I just feel like I can't do it. I can't be like good as this thing as my dad is. Like, I just don't feel like I can measure up. I don't feel like I'm good enough. And she was like, talking to him about that. And he said, what if I try my very hardest and it's not enough? And she responded to him, well, that's so silly. Like, why would your best ever not be enough? And that like broke my brain, you guys, because that's been the fear of my whole life, is that all of my efforts never feel good enough, right? It always feels like there's something lacking, right? And the minute that I feel like I accomplished something, I just move the bar further away. Like, okay, well, I did this thing, but now the bar is up here, so I still suck, right? Always moving the bar so that I always suck the same amount. And working through that, I've been getting a lot better, but it's still, it's still a mind freak. And that blew my mind, because why would we shame ourselves for not being capable of doing more than what we're capable of doing? Because you're literally setting yourself up to fail when you do that. You're saying to yourself, you're never going to be enough. You're not enough right now. You're never going to be enough, because even your best is not enough. And that is so damaging to yourself. That is so mean to yourself, right? And to be fair, you probably just learned that from your parents, that kind of attitude. You didn't mean to learn that. But like, holy cow, we got to step away from that, right? Because that is not fair. That is not fair. Like, how is it that your best wouldn't be enough? Of course it's enough. That's all that there is. That's literally the top of the bar. And like, maybe your best is a bummer. Maybe your best is not what you want it to be. But that shaming yourself for that doesn't change anything, right? Encouraging yourself, healing, getting to the bottom of why your best sucks. There's a lot you can do to make progress, right? And there's a lot you can do to have compassion and understanding with yourself. But certainly giving yourself that grace of like, there is something to be said about an earnest try and giving yourself credit for that. There is definitely something to be said about that, and something to be proud of. Yeah, this has been a fun chat so far. Okay, so let me see if I have anything else to say about that. Okay, yeah, so let's get to the juicy updates. Okay, so channel update first, and then we'll do personal update. So stick around if you want the juicy stuff. I am planning on this being my last video on the My Spiritual Life channel. There's a few reasons why. But first, rewind to 5 years ago when I started this channel. I started this channel for a few reasons. I'm going to be very transparent about this, okay? I in part started the channel because I was genuinely feeling very lonely. There wasn't as much ex-Mormon content out there at the time. And a lot of the ex-Mormon content that was out there was very intense and like too over the top for me. And so I wanted to be kind of like a reasonable voice in the ex-Mormon community of like, I don't know, just like fair criticism and like how I was managing it and stuff. And it was very helpful. It was really helpful for me. It was helpful for some other people too. And that was good. Another reason I started the channel was honestly because in part I was pretty desperate at the time to feel like heard and understood and important. I wanted to feel like I mattered, And I kind of had this really toxic idea in my head that if I could have like a popular YouTube channel, that I would convince myself that I mattered. And I'm so glad that along the way I realized that's what was happening, and that I started to course correct from that, because that is not a sustainable way to deal with your self-esteem issues. And unfortunately, this is why social media is so toxically addictive for a lot of people, because if you have a self-esteem void or issue, it's so easy to band-aid that with clicks and likes and followers and like, look how awesome I am because so and so said this on my channel. But the irony of it is that like there are some real serious idiots in the world that have millions of followers. And so it was kind of like this humbling thing I had along the way, along this journey of my YouTube journey, where I was like, just because people are commenting and saying like I did a good job doesn't actually mean a whole lot. When you think about when you see all these other channels that are out there that are like garbage ideas and garbage people and like all of the praise that they're getting, and you're just like, oh man, like it's funny you when you're in the YouTube world, you get a lot of like positive reinforcement. You also get a lot of negative reinforcement, and you almost like have to take both sides with a grain of salt because there's a lot of people that are just going to troll you and be mean and not actually have valid concerns. Like over the years, I had a lot of people like who would criticize the way I looked or my weight or my hair or whatever. And I was just like, I would get so frustrated at the time because I was like, can you just like criticize my ideas at least, like so I can get better and not like criticize things I can't like fix? Or well, I mean, some of those things you can fix, but you know what I mean. Like I was just like, I'm not putting myself out there for you to judge my appearance. Like I'm putting these ideas out there so we can discuss these ideas, and I think I have some good ideas. Like, can we talk about those? Like, anyway, um, anyway, along the way, I learned how addictive and dangerous online fame can be, and and I guess I wanted to highlight this because I I just don't ever want to fall into that trap ever again. And I'm human, it's always possible, but I think the way you combat that, because I don't think it's wrong to want fame, I don't think it's wrong to want a YouTube channel or subscribers or whatever. I think what happens to a lot of people is that they're very insecure and they go into this YouTube world or TikTok, and they get really sucked into the fame and the excitement, and they don't have secure boundaries, they don't have secure values, they don't have secure priorities, and so they just start losing themselves and just doing whatever is going to make them money or get them clicks or get them views. There's nothing that drives me more insane than like a YouTuber I really like and enjoy doing like a really clickbaity title, because I just find it so disingenuous. I'm like, if your message is good and matters, like you should never need a clickbaity title. I just feel like that's so trashy. But anyway, that's my bias. So anyway, Mama Joe says it's not wrong to reach for the stars. Yes, I agree. It's not wrong to reach for the stars. I just think that a lot of people who chase online fame are doing it to try to fill the void inside of them, and it can't do that, right? So segueing that, I came up with the idea of this new channel, Understanding You, because I was talking to my friend Cody. Actually, he does Uber Mormon, and I was like, I'm kind of thinking of changing platforms, because part of the problem with this staying on this platform long term is that all of my old videos are ex-Mormon, so the analytics with YouTube get really messed up, because it's like you watch one of my videos and then it's like, how about you watch this ex-Mormon video? But if I don't want to talk about that ex-Mormon stuff anymore, then it really bottlenecks my analytics and just makes it so that my videos like don't really get seen by anybody. Anyway, so he asked me, he's like, if you could share one message like that isn't about Mormonism, like what would it be? And I was like, understanding yourself, because that's what I'm passionate about, because that's where I found the most healing in my life, from all the trauma from my past, from all my anxiety issues, from all my people pleasing issues. Like all of this healing at its root was me just taking the time to understand myself. Because if you can understand why it is you're feeling the way you're feeling, why it is you're reacting the way you're reacting, what is at the root of what's going on, then you can actually start to make some pretty intense and amazing shifts in your perspective, in your attitude, in your healing, just like all around. So I was like, when I was, trying to figure out whether or not I would switch channels or whatever, I was just like, that message hit me so hard. Like that's really what I'm passionate about. Like I'm really passionate about the self-reflection, about the that healing and understanding yourself and improving yourself and just confronting your demons, like, and because I've just seen how much confronting my own demons, my own insecurities has been so helpful in my life. Like I notice just how much easier my life is. Life isn't easy, it's still hard, but it's easier. I get over things faster, and I'm way more present with my kids, with my family, with my relationships. Like I'm enjoying things better. I'm going after what I want more. And yeah, so I'm just so passionate about all this. Um and so in part that's why I was like, I think this is why I really want to switch gears, because I want a platform that can grow with me, where I don't feel locked into talking about Mormonism all the time or religious stuff. I loved talking about that stuff, but I don't want to talk about it forever. I don't think it's healthy to talk about it forever, honestly. Like, I think I appreciate the idea of having a space where I can talk about where I'm at with my healing, where I want to be, ideas, I don't know, being more curious, being more open, um just having like a lot of room to grow, if that makes sense. One more thing that I'll mention that I learned as I was doing this channel, that I loved, that I learned, was that no one can give you permission to do anything in your life other than you. I remember when I started this channel 5 years ago, I was terrified. I really wanted to put myself out there. I wanted my voice to be heard. I wanted to do something in the world, and I wanted to help people. There was good intent in it, as well as, like, I think, as well as some self-esteem issues also. But um I was just so scared, and I just felt like I needed permission to do the channel. I felt like I needed permission to speak up. I needed someone to, like, endow me with this blessing of, like, you're allowed to do this, or you're qualified to do this. And um that just doesn't happen in life. I realize that there's no one out there that can give me permission to do these things that I want to do other than me, you know? And that was such a powerful lesson for me. And it still is, because I'm scared to do this new channel, because it's a much bigger challenge than this current channel. Because instead of just being like, oh, here's my experience with Mormonism and here's what helped me, it's a little more serious than that, and it's a little bit more intense than that. And I am scared, but I'm also excited. And I also think, well, if there's things that have helped me, then if there's people out there who are like me, then those things would help them too. So, like, why not talk about it? Why not give myself that permission to do it? And it's cool that on some level I was able to work through all these insecurities initially, because I was able to help a lot of people with this channel. And I think I could help even more people, moving forward, potentially. And I'm honored if that's the case, and if not, that's okay. But I think ultimately, to be honest, I'm trying to do it for me. I'm trying to do it so that I have an opportunity to grow and to challenge myself, and to have some purpose outside of, like, my family responsibilities that I'm excited for, that give me a creative outlet. I've loved that about this channel. There's a lot I've loved about this channel. Honestly, I've loved, yeah, just having that challenge. having one of the coolest things that this channel taught me was things don't have to be perfect, and that action is often better than nothing. Imperfect action is often better than nothing, right? And when you're going for something big, when you're going for something that means a lot to you, you have to treat it like more like you're building yourself into something rather than like you're creating this perfect video or this perfect product or this perfect channel. Like it's more like I'm trying to build myself into someone who's really good at this thing. And that just takes time. It really like literally just takes time and effort. Like anyone who became good at anything, it's just because they spent a lot of time doing it, you know? And so you can do that. You can spend a lot of time doing whatever it is you want to become good at, but you have to work through your demons to get there, right? Um, I love the friendships that I made as a result of this channel. Shout out to Mama Joe who's watching. I love all the vulnerable and open conversations I had on this channel. And I love all the appreciation and support I got, especially in its heyday when my channel was doing a lot better back in the day. It was cool to see that I could make an impact, but also I I know it's not like those people needed me, but it felt like a big honor to feel like I could be a little part in their healing journey. So if you're watching this, if you've supported me in any kind of way over the last like 5 years, if you've supported me financially or just by watching my videos, thank you. And if I helped you at all, I'm so honored. That's very special. And I know it's helped me a lot to feel like I could put my time and energy and all the work I've put into my healing back out into the world to maybe make the world a little bit better. That's pretty cool. And if you have been on the story with me for a while, click subscribe on the new channel. Maybe we'll see where we go. I hope you join me for the next chapter. Okay, so a little bit more on the technicalities for anyone who's interested. So I already mentioned a little bit about the analytics of YouTube. YouTube just really started to bottleneck my videos as far as like it doesn't know who to show my videos to right now because it's like there's all this self-help stuff, but then there's like ex-mormon stuff and it doesn't know what to do, so it ends up showing it to like the wrong people and then they don't click on it, so then YouTube thinks my videos are bad and doesn't show them to anyone. You know, that's just kind of how it works. So the idea of going to a new channel, it's nice because there's this fresh start where I can be posting the kinds of content that I'm really passionate about, and that hopefully the analytics will show it to the right people who would actually enjoy it, would actually find it helpful, you know? So that's the hope, you know? Although I'm not trying to put too much pressure on myself right now to like, you know, go viral or anything, but it'd be nice, you know, to feel like someone's watching the videos. And as I mentioned, another big reason why I wanted to switch over to the new platform was because I don't want to talk about Mormonism forever. I'm just tired of talking about it. I'm not someone who's good at being fake at all. Like I'm so averse to any kind of fakeness. Like if I think someone's being fake with me, I'll get very frustrated. And so I can't talk about something that my heart isn't in, at least not very much. So like I can't keep talking about it. And I think that's a very good sign. I think it's very healthy and mature that I don't want to talk about Mormonism for the rest of my life. I want to talk about, you know, genuinely what is on my heart and my mind and what's helping me. And I want a space where I can do that. And I'm excited to have that. And like I said, the whole understanding you message is definitely something I'm way more passionate about right now and way excited about. And I'm just excited to be like working on that. Like, and I don't know what's going to happen. Like if the channel, you know, does well, I might keep up with it for a while. I don't know if eventually I would change my mind. I like the idea of becoming like a legit therapist one day, potentially. I'm telling myself like I'm not going to be attached to outcomes as far as Like, this is my passion. My passion is helping people to heal, to be more self-aware, to be more self-compassionate. That's where my passion is, and it doesn't really matter in what avenue I want to do it, as long as I'm doing it, because that's what will kind of feed my soul. So I'm excited to try it. I'm excited for a fresh start. I'm excited to see, what happens with the other channel. I'm excited to be back in the game working on stuff again, which is the perfect segue over to the personal update for anyone who wants to know about my life even more than you already do. So last reminder, click the link below to subscribe to my new channel if you want to follow me. And I'm definitely going to keep this channel up, especially because there's a lot of somewhat viral videos, like where I did those more niche cult interviews. I want those up for people, especially. I'm not taking anything down. I mean, I did take some stuff down that I was like, felt like a little too inflammatory for my post-Mormon life now. But anyway. Okay, so where was I? Personal update. So I haven't posted for a while, and it's because I've been having a lot of health problems, and I was just going to briefly update about that a little bit. So I've had a lot of stomach and gut problems like most of my life, and a year ago got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease as well, Hashimoto's specifically. And so we've been spending a lot of time, especially these last several months, doing a lot of more specific testing as to maybe what is at the root of all of these gut issues and autoimmune issues and everything. And I started working with some specialists that actually put me on a carnivore diet, which has massively improved things for me. And I know that it's controversial. I know people are going to be in the comment section like, you're going to die of a heart attack. I get it. I've been researching it. I understand. Anyway, turns out I got diagnosed with SIBO, which is a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth infection, as well as CFO, which is small intestinal fungal overgrowth. So we've been working on treating those. In the midst of all that, we started testing, and I got diagnosed with CIRS, which is chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Whole lots of acronyms is essentially what's going on. And CIRS is a little bit more complicated to treat. It's basically a biotoxin illness where your body is overreacting in the presence of like mold or other biotoxin things. I'm still learning about it. I just got the diagnosis very recently. Anyway, so basically, I've spent a lot of time trying to recenter myself as I've worked on changing my diet, doing all of this testing, trying to deal with just the mental stress of all of these health issues. And the good news is, after doing carnivore for a little while, my blood work just came back last week, after we tested it like 3 months ago, and we just tested again. And my blood work is getting so much better. And I was so thrilled because it makes me feel like my specialists do know what they're talking about and that they're not just fringe, crazy carnivore people. And very, very exciting. My autoimmune disease is actually starting to go into remission, which is blowing my mind. I'm not a doctor. Don't trust my advice. I just know that the antibodies are dying off, and my T3s and T4s are perfectly in range now, which is blowing my mind. So that's been really exciting. I have learned so much about myself on this diet. I will say it has been a nightmare, but also like very healing for me emotionally, because it's forced me to not rely on food as an emotional crutch anymore, which holy shit has been so freaking hard. But I'm so proud of myself. I've worked really hard to try to find good, positive replacements for my coping so that I don't feel the need to eat something I'm not supposed to right now. Because ground beef doesn't hit the spot like, ice cream does, but, you gotta do what you gotta do. So that's a little bit with the health stuff. The good news is that blood work's heading in the right direction. We have all the diagnoses now. And so I'm a little excited because it feels like the waiting game is over, and maybe I can spend a little more time on YouTube stuff now because my brain space cleared up a little bit more. So we'll see what happens. Family update. Jared is still sexy, in case anyone was worried about that. And my kids are awesome, and we are homeschooling Lucas now, which is really exciting, and I love it so much. And I'm so proud of myself because I can see how much all of my inner healing journey has allowed me to be like really present and grateful and appreciative of them, and just really enjoying like teaching my kids. And I feel really, really grateful. And lastly, I will say in my personal life, for anyone interested, the one thing I feel like I've gotten so much that's going well. It's like I have all my chores like on a schedule. Like I'm pretty organized, and like things are pretty organized in my life and functionally going very well. And what I've been working on lately the most, like overall improvement in my life, is relationships with friends and trying to deepen those and value those. And that has been really good and really hard too, because it's hard to get close to people and not be like terrified, that you're gonna get hurt or they're gonna get hurt, someone's gonna get hurt, when you have a lot of like, I had just a lot of very toxic relationships growing up. So it's been really cool to be working on some healthier friendships with healthier boundaries, and to be excited at what those friendships can look like and what they can provide to me. And just letting go of kind of all those negative expectations of the past has been very, very healing and exciting. So anyway, that's all I got for you guys. I am excited that I got to put this video out there. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting me. And if you enjoyed this video, maybe I'll see ya on the other channel whenever I get over there. No promises, but hopefully soon. Anyway, everyone, hope you all have a great night. Sending you all my love, and I'll see you in the next one.